Okay, we'll start. So to start with, I want to welcome everyone. Once again, my name is Nayes Divadillo, and I'm the Preschool Development Grant Birth through 12, birth through 5. Sorry. My name is Nayes Divadillo. I'm the Early Childhood Family Engagement Specialist. And today I have the pleasure to announce that the Department of Education has officially hired someone named Anabel Sanchez to be the parent involvement and family engagement professional. So we're very excited to have her join the group, and you'll be meeting her pretty soon. Hola a todos y bienvenidos. Mi nombre es Nayes Divadillo y soy la especialista en involucración familiar de 0 a 5 años, y estoy muy contenta de anunciarles que Anabel Sánchez ha sido seleccionada para ser la involucradora de padres y de familia en la posición profesional, así es que muy pronto la estarán conociendo. Today we're going to be having the first 15 minutes bilingually, so buckle up and get ready for the adventure. Hoy tendremos por los primeros 15 minutos, esta sesión será bilingüe, así es que abróchese los cinturones y empezaremos. Next slide, please. Siguiente diapositiva. Nuevamente, bienvenidos, y como saben, esta es la reunión para el Comité Asesor de la actualización del marco familiar de participación familiar. Once again, welcome, and as you know, this is the Birth through Grade 12 Family Engagement Framework, and we can go to the next slide. Siguiente diapositiva. So the agenda for today, we're going to be having the overview of the Zoom norms, which we just did. So we're going to have a little icebreaker because, as you know, icebreakers are always nice. We're going to have a work session. So last meeting, we talked about the framework principles. And if you were not here, don't worry about it. You'll have time to talk about the framework principles and dive in more in depth. Then once you come back from your small groups, your breakout groups, then we're gonna share out to the whole group. And then we're gonna be talking a little more in depth about tools and resources and how that looks like. And then we're gonna do a little introduction of the toolkit. So as you know, the framework has a toolkit, so we'll be doing an introduction, closing, and next steps, and of course the evaluation, because we really want to make sure that we improve. To the right side, on the corner of your right side, you're going to find the resource folder. Once again, here you can find all of the pertinent documents to this initiative. Bienvenidos, y el programa de hoy tendremos la bienvenida, tenemos una dinámica de grupo, porque ya saben que esas dinámicas siempre son importantes. Después de ahí trabajaremos en salas de grupo, y una vez que acabemos eso, después nos reuniremos y hablaremos todos juntos sobre los principios del marco, hablaremos sobre las herramientas y los recursos, y también tendremos una charla inicial sobre qué es el kit de herramientas del marco. Y por supuesto, cerraremos y les daremos la evaluación para que evalúen nuestro trabajo. Es muy importante que nos dejen saber cómo lo estamos haciendo. En la parte inferior del costado derecho encontrará el folder, la carpeta con todos los recursos y todos los documentos pertinentes a esta iniciativa. Next slide, please. Siguiente diapositiva. So to start with, what we want to do is we want you to pull up your phone. We're going to do a little icebreaker, and we just really want to see who's in the room, what are you doing. So if you pull it up and start engaging, that would be great. Para empezar, tendremos una dinámica de grupo. Esta dinámica es simplemente queremos ver quién está con nosotros, de dónde vienen. Así es que si pueden sacar su teléfono o poner el código en su teléfono usando ya sea el código QR o la página web. Okay, I see some people already joining. Veo que ya hay algunas personas que se están... Yes.
Permiso. We'll be able to use this QR link the entire presentation. So not just for the icebreaker, but you'll be able to interact with the presentation as we go from here forward. Entonces podemos interactuar con este código QR durante la presentación si están disponibles para usarlo en sus teléfonos.
Thank you, Rachel. Gracias, Rachel. Okay, so let's see if we can pull up the little icebreaker. I see more inputs coming in. Okay. Okay, so we have something on the chat. Let's see, Natalie, it says that you're not seeing where to add the code. So that code is only if you go to Mentimeter, it would ask you for it, but if you use your phone to scan it, it should open it. Let us know if you aren't able to access it. Okay, next slide, siguiente diapositiva. Okay, so we want to know who's with us today. So we want to know, you know, what age range are you serving if you're a professional? Are you doing 0 to 5, preschool or pre-K, elementary school, middle school, high school? Please go ahead and make your selections. There you go, I see them coming in. Entonces aquí estamos viendo, queremos ver qué está con nosotros. Tenemos de 0 a 5 años, aprendizaje temprano, tenemos administradores, otras personas, tenemos personas en la escuela primaria, perfecto. So if you're a parent, let us know as well. If you're a professional, we would like to hear all about it. Si son padres de familia, madres de familia, queremos escucharlos. Perfecto, perfect. Okay, so it looks like we have about 12 participants, and we have 7 entries. There you go, they're coming in. Tenemos aproximadamente 12 participantes y tenemos 7 respuestas. Aquí están llegando. Perfect. So it looks like we have mostly 0 other, which I would like to hear about it. We have some administrators in the house, elementary school, and early learning. Perfect. Okay, next slide, please. Siguiente diapositiva. Okay, so if you're a parent as well, because some of you might be parents and or professionals, we would like to hear what age ranges are your children. Si son padres, madres de familia y o profesionales, también queremos escuchar cuántos hijos tienen y cuáles son las edades de sus hijos. Perfect. Perfect. So I see more entrants coming in. Perfect. So let's see. We have 4 people in the house that are 0 to 5. We have 3 preschool, 5 elementary, 1 middle school. Look at that. We have high school and we have others. And then we also some things in the chat. Okay, perfect. Okay, next. Aquí tenemos 4 personas están en aprendizaje temprano, preescolar, escuela primaria, tenemos 5. Una persona en secundaria, tenemos 3 personas que tienen en preparatoria y 3 personas han indicado otro. And then we have parent education on the chat. My own daughter is 37. Look at that. That's a great achievement. You're a parent forever. Y ahí tenemos en el chat alguien que puso que su propia hija tiene 37 años. Vamos, vean eso. Uno es padre para siempre, para toda la vida. Qué bien. Okay, next slide. Siguiente diapositiva. Okay, so we have been talking a little bit about wanting to communicate more and listening to you. And we want to let you know that we are listening and we're paying attention to the evaluations. That's why it's very important for you to fill it out. And we want to know and we want to gauge what's your communication preference. How would you like to communicate when you're in this space? And how do you think would be more effective when communicated in this space? Cuando estamos hablando de preferencias de comunicación, queremos dejarles saber que los escuchamos, ponemos atención en esas evaluaciones y queremos escuchar más sobre ustedes. Así es que estamos muy interesados en saber cómo les gusta comunicarse, interactuar en grupo durante la reunión. Así es que queremos escuchar más de ustedes. Next slide, please. Siguiente diapositiva. Okay. So some of the options that we have added here, and you can add other as needed. How do you like to interact? Through breakout rooms? Do you like whole group discussions? Would you like to see more polls? Other? this is the time that we would like to hear from you. Queremos ver cómo prefiere interactuar. Algunas de las opciones que tenemos son las salas de charla, conversaciones, charlas con todo el grupo, encuestas, otros. So there you go. Well, it looks like we have a good variety of preferences. Parece ser que tenemos una buena variedad de preferencias. So that's great. Eso es perfecto. Okay, look at that, 8. So it looks like whole group and polls is the way to go, and breakout rooms, which are the main ways in which we are engaging. So we would like to hear more about it. And of course, fill out the evaluation because we do listen, we pay attention to what you say. Parece ser que tenemos una buena una buena distribución de las preferencias. Son las preferencias que usualmente estamos usando, pero queremos escucharlos. Así es que quiero recordarles nuevamente que es bastante importante que llenen esa evaluación porque estamos poniendo atención en lo que en las sugerencias y opiniones que nos dan. Next slide, please. Siguiente diapositiva. Okay, so over here, what we're gonna do is a little break room discussion. But before we do this break room discussion, now I'm gonna invite all of the Spanish speakers, whoever wants to join the Spanish speaking channel, to please go ahead and do so. So I'll give you some instructions. So as I say, today we have Spanish interpretation available. For the Spanish interpretation icon, please look at the bottom of your screen on the menu, on the bottom menu. You're gonna see it represented as a little globe. You have to select the words mute original audio if you don't wanna hear the presenter in the background and you just wanna hear the Spanish presentation. Hoy tenemos interpretación en español disponible. En la parte inferior de la pantalla encontrará el menú. Ahí busque el icono de interpretación representado con la imagen de un globo terráqueo y seleccione el idioma español. Por último, también se debe seleccionar las palabras que dicen Mute Original Audio Feature, apagar el audio original, para no escuchar el otro idioma en el trasfondo al mismo tiempo. So now I'm going to invite everyone who wants to join the Spanish channel to please join me. I will be your interpreter, so join me in the other room and let's have fun. Así es que ahora le invito a todas aquellas personas que quieran escuchar esta presentación en español, que me acompañen en la sala de español. Yo seré su interpretadora y empezaremos. Okay, perfect. So now we see the instructions once again on the screen. Ahora vemos una vez las instrucciones en la pantalla. And I'm gonna let my colleague Vivian Bolanos take over the next session. Ahora aquí tenemos las instrucciones en la pantalla. Y ahora invito a mi colega Vivian Bolanos a que tome la siguiente sección.
Thank you, Nayesti. So Megan, thank you. So we'll talk about the framework principles that were discussed amongst your group. So we're going to look at 3 different questions. Megan, if you could go to the Google Slides, please. So similar to work that we've been doing before in breakout rooms, this will be very similar to that. So you are going to select a breakout room, and then that first group will be for bilingual committee members. And then the other groups will have your framework principles. So I believe we have equity, relationships, and then the other 3 honoring families, linked to learning and development and building everyone's capacity. So we'll go through an example together, and then we will go into breakout rooms to do this in our groups. So here we have the example slide. So once you select the slides, the Google Slides, you'll see the title, the instructions, and then the example. And so we'll work on this one together, and then you guys will be able to go out and do your own groups. So I will need a little help from you guys to work on this example. So can anyone tell me the principle that they had for their group? And you can just call out.
Do you mean equity?
Equity, okay. So we have equity. So you'll see that show up on the screen with equity. I don't think
I
it's
did add the
updating.
framework
There
itself
we
to
go.
the chat so that everybody can see that as well. Megan, if you don't mind split screening, so that way we can pull up the framework document itself as well. And Brianna, thank you for sharing yours as equity. Just as a reminder, in the framework, if you click the link through the chat, Megan, you should be able to pull up the hyperlink and put that in one of the tabs here. There we go. Thank you. And this one is on, well, equity and the other framework principles begin on page 12.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
So this is where you can get a little bit of a reminder if you need some help or some more information on your principal. Rachel, thank you for putting that link in the chat. Megan, can we please go back to the Google Slides? Thank you. Okay, thank you, Natalie, for sharing that. So equity. So we're going to look at equity and we're going to answer a few questions about that principle. So what highlights do we have from this equity principle? And Megan, we can go back to that framework if you can. Thank you. So I'll let someone answer this question and we'll put that into our example.
And Megan, you could just split screen to the left and have that showing both.
Thank you, Megan. All right. I'll have one person tell me one highlight of this principle.
Regular screening.
Regular screening, thank you. So under equity, we see that one highlight of this principle is regular screening. Thank you. In your group, hopefully you can find some more highlights for your principle. We'll move on to question 2, just for the sake of time. Question 2 is, how does the principle reflect in different age settings and or different backgrounds and or ability? So if we take regular screening, how does that reflect in different age settings or different backgrounds or different abilities?
Regular screening in birth to 5 requires really strong healthcare partnerships, and in K through 12, it's going to require systems within school districts.
Thanks, Brianna. Yes, perfect. And so from that, what challenges can we foresee with this principle of equity in these different settings or with the highlights that we've identified?
Well, birth to 5 is easy. We don't have strong healthcare partnerships, so we don't have universal screenings. And we don't even have screening requirements in birth to 5 in NRS or in community-based care. We only have assessments. So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Perfect. Thanks, Brianna. And then what are some potential solutions for that? I'm going to call on you again because you seem to have a lot of information on this.
Equity was not my group, so I just am really uncomfortable with silence. Solutions. We need more healthcare partners at our systems leadership levels and in our subcommittees. We need to be working with recipients of HRSA and local grants like Northern Nevada Hopes, who have some specific scopes around screening and strengthening screening, looking at community navigators and referral specialists and making sure that they're aware of what is free and publicly available versus what agencies provide free screenings. And then making sure that we feel really good about what one-pagers or resource lists we're handing out and that we're sending children back to their medical homes for, referrals or evaluations. And that when they do go to their medical home provider, that pediatrician is not a wait and see, and that they have had proper, education and are sending families along to NEIS or Child Find as needed.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So that is a great example of equity. Thanks, Brianna. Even though you weren't in that equity group, you provided a lot of good information. All right, so this is kind of going to be like how you would format your answers. Of course, you can have different highlights of your principle. Hopefully you do. And then from that, go into the different impacts with the different settings and those challenges. And hopefully you can, as a group, talk about potential solutions. So if you see on the side here, there is for slide 4, that will be the bilingual group. Slide 5 will be the equity group. If you scroll down, you'll see relationships, that principle, and then our final group has that honoring families, linked to learning and development, and building everyone's capacity. I believe Megan has put those direct links in the chat. So we'll open up those breakout rooms. Choose the group that you were assigned to or that you assigned yourself to. So if you read on equity, choose the equity group. If you read relationships, choose the relationships group. And if you had those 3 shorter principles, you can also choose that group. And then we'll come
Vivian?
back. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. How long are we going to be in the groups? And then I wanted to also see if anyone had any questions about what we are doing in the groups. I know that is often the case when we get to breakout groups. So
Yeah, so we'll be in the groups for about half an hour. Correct me if I'm wrong.
20 minutes.
Sorry, 20 minutes. We'll be in the groups for about 20 minutes for you to share ideas, and then we'll come back together and share as a whole group. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. If you do have questions, please pop them in the chat or feel free to ask anyone, a facilitator, or sorry, not a facilitator, a note taker in your group if you do have any questions. All right. Well, those breakout rooms are open for you to select.
Vivian, someone on the chat needs help. I think it's named Parent Education.
Okay, I can't see what they wrote.
I think that individual needs help joining a breakout room.
It's me, Elma. I'm the one that's lost.
Okay, yeah, how can I help you?
I'm lost. I don't know how to join
Join the group?
a group, yes. And I would like to go in the Spanish one.
Okay, I can assign you to that one.
Okay. I wasn't in the last meeting, so I'm lost.
No problem. Okay, I will send you to the bilingual group.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
And this is Karen Holly, and I'm lost too, and I'd like to go to relationships.
Yeah, of course. I will send you there.
Thank you.
Does anyone else need some support getting to a group?
Vivian, can you send me to the last group?
Yeah, which one? Nayesti or Nayesti English?
I guess English.
Okay.
Vivian, I'm just filling in for Sarah today. So
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't read over any of this. Really just here for Sarah. So I don't know. What group do you think I should join?
Let's see. There are. Do you have something that's like sticks out at you? No.
Find,
Okay.
just find me a group who you think needs it.
Okay. I'll put you in equity.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Hi, this is Danya from Las Vegas Urban League. I also need a group to be assigned to.
Okay. Perfect. I will sign you to relationships.
Okay,
Does that work?
perfect.
Let someone in, if you guys want to explain what breakout room to go to that person.
Hi, Aben. We are in breakout rooms. If you have a principle that you read, I can assign you to that group. So we have the equity, relationships, and then honoring families, learning and development, and building capacity. Do you have a preference? Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Honoring families.
Okay, perfect.
Mm.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for being late.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to join a group. Let me know if you need anything.
Sounds good. Let me know if I need to join a group or anything too, please.
Yeah, I think we're good. So we should have people come back to the big room. There we go. All right, I think we have everyone back in the main room. So I want to hear your reflections on the principle that you reviewed. So we'll start with our bilingual group. I'll have someone from this group share their reflections on the principle.
Estaban hablando Lupita y Telma y no terminamos de escuchar sus comentarios. Entonces, voy a preguntarlas a Telma o a Lupita si pueden compartir lo que está aquí. Y no recuerdo cómo vamos a hacer la interpretación para esta parte. It's the reverse, so I don't remember what we planned for interpreting this part. Pero Telma y Lupita, ¿qué pueden resumir de nuestra conversación?
In English or in Spanish?
That's up to you.
Okay, well, we talked a lot about, and actually that's what we talked about, that it's important that parents have the buy-in into this, because without their buy-in, it's not going to work. And their fear, and I'm talking about Spanish speaking parents and members of the community that are Spanish speakers, that they say, oh, I've heard that before. Yes, I've heard that you guys, that people are trying to do this, but ultimately nothing gets done. So what do we have to do to disseminate this information so that more people have buy-in into what we're trying to do? And then Lupita was talking about how people come to her because she didn't have any knowledge at the very beginning with her son's special needs, but now she does. So people come to her and ask her, so what do I need to do? Where do I have to go? So what can we do to, so that the people we're fighting for know that we're serious about what we're doing. We're not just talking. Mostly that's in general, that's kind of a what we talked about the whole time. So, right? Am I right, Rachel?
Yeah, and I want to add to that, parts of our conversation as we were discussing this is how can we make connections to these very short sections within the framework? The words there are small, right? And so there's not a lot of connection to how to do that or what that really means. So in that sense, they really do just feel like words on the page. And so we were talking about making connections between using the tools and bringing those solutions in, bringing that community and family input to really round out those sections so that there are clear connections to organizations in the community, work that's happening at different agencies, to examples and to really the power of word of mouth and into using those resources, because it talked about having workshops. It talked about several strategies at the end of the section for building capacity. But that's where it stopped. And so really we have to make the connection to making that happen so that what Thelma was sharing can come to pass or can come about.
Thank you. Those are all great points.
There was a lot of talking.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing your reflections. Next we'll go to
Sorry, Vivian. So now I'm going to invite all of the Spanish speakers, whoever wants to listen to the presentation in Spanish, to go back to their Spanish rooms. Ahora quiero invitar a todos aquellos que son hispanohablantes, si se quieren unir al grupo de español, por favor, hágalo, y he puesto las instrucciones en el chat. Thank you, Vivian. You can go.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to our equity group. I'll let them share their reflections on this principle.
Thank you. And please feel free to hop in on some of these. We appreciate that head start that we got earlier on this section, but we chose to focus on evidence-based interventions and inclusion, and really looking at high quality. And so we, really highlighted in our first section some of those principles as being, including the whole family in the intervention and in the decision making, and really clarifying what is meant by high quality, because we know that that can mean something different for every family. Anything else? I know Anna, you were in there with me. If you want to, I don't want to take up too much space.
I'm trying to read the notes that we had. No, definitely the data, making sure that we have the adequate data to make those decisions, and making sure that even parents have input in that data.
Absolutely. And then as we're looking at how those principles are reflected in different settings, of course, language access, making sure things are culturally relevant when we're talking about those interventions. This is something that I'm constantly learning as we're discussing these things. And then taking a strength-based approach, looking at what families already have in place and building on that. And then some of the challenges that we highlighted is how, in certain spaces, culturally specific interventions are sometimes minimized. And so we want to just lift that up and make sure that we view our families as the experts of their families. We also looked at the lack of funding sometimes in the spaces that we're in to really focus in on equity. It takes time and it takes intentionality. So we want to just highlight that piece of it. And then some of the ways that we can, manage these challenges. We looked at potential solutions. Obviously, funding is big, but professional development and intentional professional development, so that we can, that's really led by families, because we want them to be seen as experts. Again, also resource mapping, we highlighted that there are not sometimes culturally relevant resources in a particular neighborhood. So finding out where those gaps are and filling those gaps. And then, of course, paying our early childhood educators better to provide those trainings. We want them to be experts and incorporate equity, but we know that compensation is big when we're looking at how do we create a space for educators or those who are working with families to make that common practice.
Thank you so much, Equity Group. Those are great points. Yeah, more money would be great for our programs, right? Helping all the families that we need to help. All right, we'll go to our relationships group next.
We didn't pick a spokesperson, but I'll go ahead and just start, and then ladies, if you want to add. So I had a group, I don't think any of them are here today, and we were going to work on a shared doc. And so I just transferred what I had added to that to the slide. So I have some comments in there as well, because that was, the hope was to have a whole conversation with our group, but that didn't really happen. So these are just kind of my thoughts. So I'm coming at this from an educator point of view. And so some of the things that I found in the relationships section, I thought what was really good is that we were acknowledging that the relationships need to be authentic, respectful, and trusting, and really intentional. And that kind of led to a little discussion we had with the group that joined me today, in terms of, trying to find out what families need, because that's, in order for us to be able to form those relationships, we need to kind of know what they need to get out of that. And so that comes with some intentionality in doing so. One of the reflections, I didn't quite understand this question, but this is how I interpreted it. I just felt like the framework as a whole is very reflective of early childhood and primary school level children. And I think that makes the relatability to at the secondary level a little bit challenging. And I say that because I teach the family engagement course that's required for our new teachers and teachers new to Nevada. And that's one of the main, I guess, grumbles from teachers at the higher level is that the resources and whatnot aren't really connected to them. So I just felt like maybe if we could somehow within this framework, whatever adjustments we're going to make is really kind of keep those folks in mind as well so that they can see themselves in this. And then a challenge, huge challenge is lack of time and systems to support educators in their efforts to create those authentic relationships. And then I also wrote down uncovering families' needs. I feel like most educators want to form those types of relationships, but they take time, and time is not on the teacher's side, especially with the things that are piled on them. So with there being a lack of, how should I say it, priority, maybe at the systems level or at the upper, like at the admin level, it makes it really hard for teachers for it to translate and them to actually do that. And I think also, I know that it was just mentioned about having professional development. I think providing professional development to admin and people who are making those decisions would be helpful instead of starting at the bottom up. So anyway, and then I had a couple of notes on there about some of the language of that section. So it was just, I wasn't at the first meeting, so I felt like maybe you guys talked about some of the language that was happening. So I just kind of pulled some things out there. I did feel like the last paragraph really focused on implicit bias. And although that's super important, I'm not sure that this is the right place for it necessarily, because I feel like, well, I'll just read what I wrote. I'm not sure that the emphasis within this principle, it's mentioned like 5 times, is the best place. I think schools and educators would be better served if this section provided information regarding creating a school culture that values family engagement, as well as educator dispositions and practices related to ensuring that families feel valued and respected. I think we have to start there before we can start really uncovering our implicit biases and taking that step. So that's all I have.
Thank you. That's great. I love those perspectives. I think Rachel put that in the chat that I also come from an early childhood lens. So for me, it was lacking that early childhood perspective, but it's great to see how from different perspectives, you're seeing different things. Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right. Our next group, we have honoring families linked to learning and development and building everyone's capacity.
There was only 2 of us in this group, so our conversations kind of pinged around. We started at honoring families, and one of the things that we were talking about was children or families as their child's first teacher, right? Having this deep well of expertise and calling on that knowledge as a form of partnership. And we had talked about how if you are a non-native English speaker, you are probably going to have less opportunity to participate in this type of engagement. and sharing of, and that could be within any age group, right? So if you're in community-based care, or if you're in kindergarten, or if you're in 6th grade, it's going to be really difficult for you to feel confident in advocating for what you're seeing at home or for your child and their strengths in, you know, one-on-one conversations with your teacher or during family engagement events at the school. So just having a much shallower well to pull from. And then we had also talked about how that reciprocal communication is important, and that often, since we're talking about these at a systems level, we're placing the burden on teachers, right? Like teachers need to be constantly need to be the ones reaching out and creating these moments for families, which yes, they do. It's a part of the educator's role, but also being receptive to how the family is showing up in their space. And I had shared an anecdote about my now 8-year-old son when he was 3, 4, and 5, entering preschool and entering kindergarten. I had created a fact sheet because he can be a lot, but he's very well behaved. But like, I know his triggers, and I know the things that he's naturally going to gravitate towards in the classroom. And I know all of the comments that his previous teachers had told me about him. And I kind of gathered this fact sheet and handed it to his new teachers every year. So it could act as a shortcut for them. So they're not spending so much of their time learning these cues. And I would ask about it, and none of them over 2 or 3 years that I did this had ever read it. Like I put it together and they didn't read it. So for me, the honoring families thing is, yes, there is responsibility on the teacher's end to be creating moments of engagement, but also accepting the energy that the family is bringing in to create that partnership. So watering that lawn. Yabin, did you want to add anything?
I think you covered what we kind of talked about. We just couldn't finish like our conversation. We lacked time, so we couldn't really go to the link to learning and development. But yeah, I think to reach out to diverse groups of families, it's really important to respect the family's cultural, and then so it's really important to have a culturally sensitive like approach to reach out to diverse groups of families. I think that's the key to be connected to those families. And of course, I mean, families need to be reaching out to the schools, but I think the schools and system really needs to make some friendly environment for those families so they can be more like feeling more welcomed.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any additional comments they would like to share before we move on to our next section? I just love hearing all the reflections from the different principals. I think it's great that we get to share in a safe space and make things better.
I want to ask a question of the group and also of our facilitators and planners, even though I participate in that group too. I am curious, like, what do we want to do with that information, right? We just had a really robust and rich discussion based on what came from our breakout groups. And how do we want to use that to update the framework, right? So some of those next steps after our committee finishes our monthly meetings, right? What do we want to do with everything that we just shared? How do we want that to inform the update? So we don't have to answer that now, but it's something that I was just thinking and reflecting on. We had, you know, just between the 16 of us or 15 of us who are here today, a really rich conversation with many important considerations that can be used to update this document and make it usable. So thinking of how we can bring that into, do we want continued conversation around those principles? Do we want to start diving into making those connections that we were talking about, or exploring more of those perspectives of the age bands? So we can put out an ask with Nayesti and with our new Department of Ed Family Engagement professional, Annabelle, and really kind of come to consensus on how we want to leverage the perspectives of this group to actually do that update and to inform it, because we do want to move beyond just our words here and the words on the page in the framework so that we can make them meaningful and actually start transforming and having some of that impact that we all just shared that we'd like to see. Thanks, Vivian.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we will move on to our next section with the resources and tools, and I'll let Rachel talk a little bit about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. If you guys go ahead and rescan back in or refresh on your device that you already joined on, we are going to have a couple more interactive pieces here. And part of the segue between what I was just asking, what do we want to do with it? I think it impacts the framework principles, but also really impacts the toolkit. And so during our last time together, last committee meeting, we did start exploring the resources versus tools. It came up when we were reviewing the definition, and it came up when we were talking about responsibility, and it's come up again during today's conversation as we reviewed the principles. So one of the items that we have been looking at through the preschool development grant birth through 5 overall is family engagement. Megan, would you go ahead and scoot to the next slide? Something that we asked them, and this one's not in Spanish, so we need to, Naya, see if you can just translate that as you're interpreting. Thank you. So please feel free to enter this, but we wanted to start off with asking those of us here what would be useful in the toolkit. So whether you're super familiar with the toolkit or not, we just want to do this high level input session of what would be useful. So let's take a couple of minutes to enter some responses here from our group. You can think on toolkits that you've interacted with in the past. I always think of the items I pull out of my toolkit. I hung a mirror in my room the other day, and from my toolkit, I needed my drill, I needed my hammer, I needed my screws, I needed my wall anchors, I needed my stud finder. I needed all of these tools in order to accomplish that task of hanging my mirror. And thinking of what tools do we need to do family engagement in the partnerships and with the relationships that we were just discussing, using those framework principles, what tools do we need? So we're going to leave this here. Megan, would you go ahead and put up the 1-minute timer on this slide? And I'm going to mute, and I just would love to see you guys entering. You can also pop the QR code, Megan, so that everybody can get it on their device. And I see the link in the chat already. So let's go ahead and populate this screen, and we'll review some of those answers. Hi, I had a call from my child care who's serving my school age children during spring break. Sorry to go off of mute and video there for a second. My child left his lunch in my car. So, speaking of family engagement and partnership, there we go. That's one very live example. So some of the items or some of the responses that you guys have up here is welcoming families, separate strategies for parents, families, schools, and communities. I really love that. I can't wait to dive in more. How is information distributed among families so that it's relevant? Sample assessments. So there's a variety of things. I asked this same question to a a group of 500 educators during a presentation in early March and had them share what their thoughts were. The educators in the room were elementary, middle school, high school administrators. They were 0 to 5, they were preschool. The same roles that we asked you earlier were represented in that group. So what we're going to do next is just review what they've said. Of those 500 educators that were attending that presentation, only 200 of them responded or participated. So I think that's important to consider here. But of that representative data, more than half of the participants voted to explore family engagement before five other options or 4 other options that we could have explored. So they all voted family engagement as number 1 thing that they wanted to review and dive into. And so this question that I asked to them, there's several slides. This is not, you guys aren't entering these. This is just of who participated there. These are the results from that conversation. But I would like to, as Megan scrolls through the slides here, I'd love people to come off of mute and just share what stands out to them. There's about 10 slides, and so we'll just take 1 share out per slide, but pay attention because there are repetitions amongst this data that we're going to be using to filter, and also that will drive our next conversational prompt. So I'm going to mute. I'm going to ask you guys to engage here and just come off of mute and share something that stands out to you from what those 200 educators would like to see in Toolkit.
Yes, una cosa que yo creo que es importante y no lo veo aquí, pero es que nosotros somos un comité que estamos haciendo recomendaciones y todo esto para ayudar a las familias, pero muchas personas no son, realmente no están envueltas en exactamente. These people, a lot of people are not involved in, yes, they're not. And so I think that involvement with the people we're talking about, you know, with the people in the community that they need to know this. I think people need to be more involved with it and not just talk about it. And I'm just saying it because I have groups of family groups. I have 2 now, and I have one in an elementary school. And this is one of the things they talk about is that the people writing this don't really know personally what it is that's happening at their level. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. But
yes, Thelma,
I think more people need to be actually involved personally.
So I agree, Thelma, and I'm going to see here, this slide, what's up here right now, was shared by 200 educators, and somebody did call that out. It is on the screen. Challenges when doing family involvement and how to solve them. So I'm going to call that out from this screen, and we are taking notes and we're going to review all of our emerging themes, but definitely want to bring that up when we come into full group discussion in just a minute. So thank you, Thelma. Megan, would you scoot to the next slide and let's just take a look at what stands out next to us, like what stands out to us from here. Again, if anyone from our participants today, I want you to unmute and just call out what you see, and then we'll scoot to the next slide and we'll bring all these ideas together. I could tell you what stands out to me, but I'd like to hear your voices.
I'm seeing a thread which kind of mirrors my original suggestion, which is in activities that educators can use. I'm seeing playbook, activity ideas. To me, I'm seeing that and like, when can I use and how? And so is this something that I am doing at the beginning of the school year to get to know families? Is this something I am doing on a consistent basis, like on a weekly or a quarterly or a monthly, so that I have a consistent connection with them? Or is this some kind of event where I'm bringing in multiple people? So to me, when I put on my educator hat, it's thinking through like what types of ways can I continually connect, because those are going to happen at different frequencies. So not everything's going to be a bingo night. Sometimes I need to just send a postcard home.
Thank you, Brianna. Rosa, I see your hand up as well. Was there something you wanted to call forward from these ideas?
Sí, gracias Nayesti. Yo quisiera que haya algo donde exista una línea de comunicación que sea algo como un estándar, right? An open line of communication where the families feel that this exists at the very beginning of the year, so they can talk about anything, everything with that trust already built. Because if that's not built at the very beginning of the year with their kid, it's going to be very hard for them to communicate later on about anything. Again, anything, everything during the middle of the year, the end of the year, something small, something big. So, kind of to go off of what Bree said, if that doesn't exist, if that's not part of this process, it's not going to be something that, I don't know what to say.
Thank
Like
you, Rosa.
if it's not something that's already like established that nobody really has to do, then it'll break a lot of communication, a lot of trust, and that's what we need. We need to be able to talk to our kids, our children's teachers, and say, hey, this is going on, knowing that space exists. So if we can create that, establish it, I think that would help. You know, just so much.
I agree with Rosa. Yo estoy de acuerdo con Rosa. Estoy de acuerdo que eso hay que desarrollar la comunicación entre los maestros y los padres. Hay que desarrollarla y tenemos de alguna manera que hacerles llegar a ellos que pueden trust, que pueden confiar en nosotros. Porque yo creo que si no existe eso, la confianza entre los maestros y los educadores a todos los niveles, no se puede hacer nada, porque muchas veces le tenemos que dejar saber a ellos que su voz es importante y que sin ellos no podemos hacer el trabajo que nosotros queremos hacer.
Thank you, Thelma. There are so many wonderful conversations and needed conversations to have. I am reaching the time on this part of our meeting today. So Megan, if you just want to do a slow scroll, something that came forward to me as those comments were shared is there's a playbook was written on one of the slides, and playbook is a very interesting take on toolkit, because you can have your toolkit, but what are you doing with that information? And it takes the playbook, like your play-by-play, your strategies, how that affects the work that you do, and then those partnerships and that collaboration. So that's a really interesting thing that stood out to me as I was listening and as Megan scrolls through. Again, these ideas were shared by 200 educators in that session. And so there's a lot to unpack. So we will continue pulling those emerging themes and bringing them to our committee for discussion so that we can really evolve the toolkit as it is.
¿Tú quieres decir cuando hablas se habla del playbook? Es como un libro de instrucciones.
Thelma, te pregunto si estás en el canal de interpretación, porque estás hablando de Nayesti, pero está bien, no me importa y me gusta escuchar su voz y sus comentarios, pero estás en el canal de inglés, porque te escucho, o tal vez que yo estoy en el canal de español, no sé, tal vez que es una cosa de interpretación, pero si también quieres decir tu comentario en inglés para que todos se escuchan también, porque, bueno, no
So,
sé.
Rachel and everybody attending, as you become more language accessible, anyone who wants to give their opinion in whatever language, it would always come to the main room. That's a new Zoom update. I just learned about it.
Gracias. Then Nayesti, if we want to just reverse interpret them that way, everybody can hear all of the comments. We'll have to add that to our own toolkit as we continue learning how to bilingually provide our resources. And Thelma, thank you so much for your comments in both English and Spanish. We're going to dive into 2 questions as well related to this topic. So now that we've heard a little bit from or seen a little bit from other educators that are outside of this space, how can we keep learning from them in the field and the families they serve? So that's going to be the next question that pops up. How can we learn from educators? So the ones that I was just summarizing and that you guys called out those reflections from were specific to a presentation that I was providing, and I asked that question. What else can we do to learn from our educators? So Nathalie, I look forward to your reflections here. Megan, go ahead and scoot to the next slide and make sure to pop up the QR code so everyone can make sure they're in there. But just simple strategies that we would like to enact as an advisory committee for the framework update to continue learning from our educators in the field. And we'll ask as well if your voice represents parent voice as well today, how can we continue learning from parents in the field as well? I don't want to ignore that. It's not an explicit question that's coming next, so please enter either perspective. So implementing a continuous feedback loop with incentives. How else can we continue learning from our educators and from our parents? Even unpacking how to implement a continuous feedback loop. Does that mean that as a committee, we would like to design an input opportunity for our educators with some of those key emerging themes that we've been discussing and that we're considering updating, like some of those very specific areas of the framework? Many of the educators that I was speaking with were unaware of the framework. They didn't know about it yet. And so even though it's been out, some of that dissemination and some of that communication wasn't well defined. And so it was really hard for them to grasp, oh, this is a really big framework. What do I do with that? So some of that input in terms of continuous feedback loop, what strategies may we explore? Showing up. Whoever put in showing up, will you come off of mute and elaborate a little bit on that? Thank you,
That was
Brianna.
me. I did the first thing. But I think it's important when we have the opportunity to visit classrooms or set up meetings. It might not always be an opportunity to come into an actual classroom, but to set up one-on-one meetings with our educators, finding out what they need. I think it's important when we talk about building relationships amongst other leads to be able to get the information we need aside from just sending out a survey. We get more authentic answers in that way, I believe.
Going into those spaces where they are connecting with those who they connect with. So again, those regional professional development programs, our community programs that are parent and family engagement forward facing, professional development overall, how can we show up in those spaces? Same thing certainly applies to families. Listen with an open mindset. We can learn from each other and support one another, learning from educators through their reflections. Those are all great. Thank you. We can continue to think on this as well as we do the update. How can we bring in the educator and parent voice to really inform the update? So we have our own roles and platforms and space on this committee, but we want to make sure this update is reflective and responsive to educator and family need as well. Megan, go ahead and hit next. That said, what do we want to change in the toolkit? So we've talked about age bands, we've talked about changing a few things in the framework principles, but when it comes to strategies or ways that we can change or evolve the toolkit is where this one has its emphasis. I'm going to ask that we think on this, and we might send out a survey just to the full group if we don't have a whole lot of time left to really explore this question. But we will be continuing to dive into those. What are those strategies? What are those specific changes that we'd like to bring into the toolkit is going to be one of our next conversations. So it's more of the how, because we've been sharing many ideas on the what. So if anyone pops in a question there, you can use your device. You could also share in the chat if it comes up in a second. I'm going to move to the next one. I'm sorry, I know we don't have enough time there. More practical strategies. Sorry. I don't mean to cut us off there. I also want to respect our time for today. So in closing for today's conversation, we have a few next steps. Our next meeting, we are working again on a doodle poll to find the best meeting time that works for those in the committee. So this QR code is external to the presentation. Please go ahead and scan it. Or we will be sending out the bit.ly links with the doodle polls. So that will be for our April meeting. So please go ahead and scan that and share your availability. We're going to try to select that time as soon as possible so that your calendars, which probably populate pretty quickly, can hold the date that we select so that everybody can attend. And then the second QR code here is the evaluation survey. So as Nayesti mentioned earlier during our icebreaker, we are reading those results and using them to make immediate changes to the formatting and to the committee meetings that we do have. And at this point, because we have Annabelle Sanchez now joining our team, which we're very excited about, we'll also be moving into other ways to gather input and to share. So when you guys opted in to participate to the committee, we asked a variety of ways that you may like to engage, whether that were editing documents, whether it were participating live, whether it were watching a recording or filling out a survey. We asked you several methods, and now that we'll be fully staffed again with our leader at the Department of Education, who is accompanying Nayesti in this capacity, we'll be bringing in more of those strategies to really continue getting the committee's feedback to drive the update and the framework update. So the evaluation survey results are critical to making sure that those strategies are relevant and responsive to our committee needs. So go ahead and scan those too. If you haven't already, we will be sharing them as follow-up as well. We did begin adding the meetings to a YouTube channel so that anybody who's not here will be able to view anything or review the conversations that we have had in their raw and beautiful form. And so that means if you feel like you missed something or you wanted to, you can access it there on our YouTube channel. We'll send that out with our meeting notes and reminder as well. Megan, next slide, please, which I think is the last one. It just turned 11:30 on my clock. So Nayesti's contact information is here. We will also be sharing Annabelle's, and you'll get to meet her over email first and then in the April committee meeting. So we look forward to seeing you all again then. And thank you for being here. We wouldn't be able to do this framework update without your voices and by extension, reaching the voices of those you serve as well. So we will see you all very soon. Thank you.